Good morning. It's time to begin our Bible class here this Sunday morning. We are continuing in our study of forgiveness. This marks the beginning of week number 4, so we got 2 more weeks on this topic. I've really enjoyed it so far. I appreciate the discussion. I think it's been really beneficial to me. I hope it's been to you. We are still on the topic of granting and receiving human forgiveness. We had talked about the forgiveness that we receive from God. Now we're talking about showing that same attitude that God has and for being eager and willing to forgive, and how we can have that same attitude with our fellow man. Before we get started, I asked Brother Clark if he would open, Jeff Clark, if he would open our class with a word of prayer. Amen. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to put this slide up again. I bring this up just about every time, but we talk about the dimensions of forgiveness. We've talked about the vertical in previous classes, God's forgiveness for us, which should motivate us to forgive. Last week, we talked about the internal, the forgiveness that occurs within us that helps us get over bitterness and anger and the negative attitudes that we have towards our fellow man, which that's something that we can do internally. But there's also the aspect that is the horizontal. That's the restoring a relationship, the reconciliation, and the process of reconciliation, so we bring people back together again. Jesus doesn't want his people to have broken relationships. Just like he wants to have a healed relationship with us, we want to have healed relationship with our fellow man. So that's what we're going to be talking about this class this morning. So reconciliation, let's talk about that. I want to start with Galatians 6, verses 1 through 2. I think this is a good place to start when we talk about reconciliation. Galatians 6, 1 through 2 says, "Brothers, if anyone is caught in any transgression, you who are spiritual should restore him in a spirit of gentleness. Keep watch on yourself, lest you too be tempted. Bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ." So here we see this idea of restoration in Galatians 6. What does this passage say about our motives when we talk about restoration? Does it say anything about our motives? Ryan?
I think there's an acknowledgement that there is something that's lacking that can be improved upon.
Okay.
And so when we restore, and that is something that ultimately you make that improvement, or somehow it is, I hesitate to call it recreated, but it is modified to create a new type of existing relationship.
Okay, so I think what you see here, aligned with what you said, Ryan, is that there's a motive of trying to help someone here, motive of looking out for the other person and recognition of where they are. First, it says if anyone's caught in a transgression. Now, this kind of imagery here is someone who is trapped, who's stuck, right? And you've ever had your kids. All the time we have slats in our chairs. They get their arms stuck in the chair, and they're miserable, and they can't get out themselves. So you're there to help them, help free them. I think the idea there is us as brothers and sisters. We're trying to help people who oftentimes feel trapped. It's our desire to help free people from their sin. So when we're talking about reconciling a relationship, I think we should draw upon our motives of trying to help someone else out. Sometimes, you think about how we should do it. What does this say about how we should go about restoring, Jeff? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. A lot of times when we're wronged, like you said, Jeff, we want to come down hard. We want to say, you're wrong in this matter. We're right. You're wrong. But if we connect it to the motives that we see at the beginning, we want to free somebody. We want to help someone who's being trapped by sin. Then we should draw upon our feelings for them. That's for their sake. And when we want to help someone, we got to think about, as Jeff said, our tone and how we do it. The how is just as important as the what. Mom? Yeah. Yes, Ken. Mm-hmm. Right? Yes. Uh, Treat others as the way, in the way that God treated us. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, Debbie? Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with what you said about that last part. We have to watch ourselves lest we be tempted, and it begs the question, tempted to do what, right? And I think the idea is there is the temptation to respond with pride or arrogance, right? And so, or feelings of moral superiority, which is something that a lot of times when we're wrong, that's sort of our natural reaction. To think, I'm in the right, you're in the wrong, so I'm going to beat you over the head with the Bible or something like that, right? Throw a Bible bomb. There you go. I think Paul likes to say that. Yeah, throw a Bible bomb. So, so all this just speaks to the attitude that we should have when we're confronting someone. Now, there are times when we do have to be blunt, or maybe you're going down a very destructive road and be very straightforward about that. I'm not saying we should sugarcoat the realities, but we also need to make sure that we're not taking this as an occasion to puff ourselves up. Todd? Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, a lot of times we like to watch for other people, but we don't turn that gaze inward. Yeah, that's a good point. Jared? Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's a good point. Yeah, it's key to be spiritually minded here. The carnal self. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's important to be introspective in this process because you can do great good, and I think that's the point. We want to do the good. We want to help save people, but we also can do damage. Rhett. Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Yeah. The bear one another's burdens, I think, is kind of sums up the idea here. Is we're here to help each other. We're here to help each other get to heaven. We're not here to show somebody that they're wrong just so we can show our own superiority or dunk on them or whatever. We're here to help each other, right? So this is the kind of attitude we need to have. in our hearts when we are faced with a conflict between each other is think about the other person. Think about what you can do to help save, to help someone who's caught. Any last thoughts on this passage? Good discussion, by the way. Yeah, Debbie? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. A healthy dose of humility will help us anytime we have a conflict. I think somebody brought it up in an earlier class. It's like, maybe it was Todd, I can't remember. Whoever, I'll give Todd credit. You get credit for this. But like, even if you think you're like 100% right, you should keep that 10% around. It could be you. It could be you. We have to be humble enough to acknowledge that. Yeah. Jeff? Oh, sorry. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, how we do it is we should give that as much consideration or more consideration even than what we're doing. Did you have something, Jeff? Or? Yeah. That's an excellent point. You're right. Bear one another's burdens here is spoken in the context of transgression and sin, right? Do we know what sin people are struggling with in this congregation? Maybe in some cases, but maybe not. Maybe we don't share that enough. And we have to help each other bear the challenges of sin, which is really hard, really hard. All right, good discussion. I appreciate that. So one of the questions I put on your homeworks related to reconciliation is the question, who makes the first move? You know, let's say Rhett and I have gotten into a situation where, Rhett has done me wrong, and I can just sit there and be angry at Rhett, and, well, I'd forgive Rhett, but, I'm waiting for him to come apologize to me because he's done me wrong. I'm not gonna make up with Rhett. I'm not gonna make the first move. I'm waiting for Rhett to make the first move. But then you might have Rhett over there thinking, Dan has been really cold to me. He's been not even looking me straight in the eye. I don't know what's going on. Dan, he's treating me really bad. I'm going to wait till Dan makes the first move in this relationship. You can see how that could be sort of a situation that's hard to break free of. So whose responsibility is it to make the first move in reconciliation? Jeff? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So that 100%. Yes, Ken? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so here it's the person who sinned and also the person who has been sinned against. So yeah, I thought I debated whether to do this or not, but it's a trick question. It's both. It's both. Yes, Brian. Okay, sorry, I stole your thunder. Yeah. So really, if you have a relationship problem, it's your responsibility. It's yours. It's never someone else. I mean, it is someone else's responsibility. It's everyone's responsibility. But if you're ever questioning who should make the first move, you make the first move. So, Jeff brought up Matthew 5:21 through 26. So let's read that. I didn't put it on the text out on the PowerPoint. But if you want to turn there, Matthew 5, starting in verse 21, it says, "You have heard that it was said to those of old, you should not murder. And whoever murders will be liable to judgment. But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council. And whoever says, 'You fool,' will be liable to the hell of fire. So if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you are going with him to court, lest your accuser hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the guard, and you be put in prison. Truly I say to you, You will never get out until you have paid the last penny. Okay, so here we see Jesus teaching, just zooming in on verse 23. He says, if you're in worship, if you're in the act of worship, and you remember that someone has something against you, that's kind of a weird, to me that's like, I don't know. I have to kind of unwrap that in my brain, but basically, if you've done something against someone else, you need to put everything down and go fix that problem right then. He's saying, even if you're in the midst of worship, why would he say that? If anybody wants to get up right now, by the way, feel free. Yeah. Right. If you know that someone has something against you, if you've done something to offend your brother, and you just are callous to that and aren't willing to do anything about that, why are you going to worship God? Right? Is your heart in the right place? Do you have the attitude that Jesus wants you to have? Absolutely not. So what he's saying is this is even more important than worship, is to make sure that you fix that relationship with your brother. Debbie? Yes. 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 Sure. Mhm. Right. Yeah, a lot of times worship will also kind of open our eyes to these kind of things, right? Like maybe there's no coincidence at all that Jesus is talking about in the middle of worship. You realize you have something against your brother. Sometimes, it's a prayer or it's a sermon or a song or something makes you reflect, makes you realize that you need to take care of a relationship problem. And don't wait. Do it. Go. You be the one to make the first move. Yes, Rhett. Yeah. 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 A lot of times broken relationships does, bring our heart down. We can't bring our full heart in worship because we're dealing with some pain in our lives. And yeah, to give God 100% of our heart, it requires that we deal with those kinds of things. Yeah. Good? All right, so here's the other passage I have, Matthew 18. Let's turn there. Matthew 18, verse 15. All right, Matthew 18:15. If your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. If he listens to you, you have gained your brother. But if he does not listen, take one or two others along with you, that every charge may be established by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. If he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And if he refuses to listen even to the church, let him be to you as a Gentile and a tax collector. All right, so here we see in Matthew 18, and this one's different, right? So the other one was like, if someone has, or if your brother has something against you, this one says, if your brother sins against you. So we have the other relationship. You have been sinned against. So what does it say? Well, it says, go and tell him his fault. Go. So in this case, again, it's your responsibility to try to reconcile this relationship. And again, look at the motivations here. I think that's clear in verse 15, is to gain a brother, right? We want to have that relationship restored. We want to reconcile ourselves with our brothers. We don't go to them to prove them wrong or to show that, we're in the right and they're in the wrong. The point is to restore a broken relationship. Ultimately, this restoring, gaining a brother, I don't think is just between us. I think it's also helping them restore their relationship with God. So it goes even further, even more important than just our man-to-man relationship. So we see this escalation that can happen. So first it's like a one-to-one thing. I go and I tell my brother, man-to-man. But then it says, if that doesn't work, take 1 or 2 others with you. And then finally, if that doesn't work, tell it to the church. What's the wisdom in doing it that way, Todd? Yeah. Right. Yeah, there's a lot of wisdom there. I think sometimes when it's one-on-one and people are in conflict with each other, the personalities can get in the way. Like if I'm just angry at somebody, I can't see past that anger, and it doesn't allow me to move forward. But if there are other people involved, as Todd said, sometimes it helps moderate the conflicting parties a little bit, and helps you get past the personality issue or the anger. Debbie? Yeah, you're ganging up on me. Yeah. Right. Right. No, good point. Yes, Ryan.
The truth to all of this is that our heart is going to
Mm-hmm.
And if we're not living that way, we're not following after God.
Yeah. Good. Jimmy? Right. Yeah.
Building a bunch in the church against the individual, that would be inappropriate after that second.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think. Yeah. You don't want to do this backwards, and that leads to more problems. So, Mom. Right. Yeah. Hopefully, it can just be settled in the first one-to-one discussion. We can all have the humility to be able to work things out, but unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't go that way. But yeah, we don't want to spread gossip or anything like that. Sometimes people, I think, when they're in a situation where the relationship's tense, that they want to go and tell more people because they're warning others, right? But really, it's kind of an attitude of gossip, right? So there's a lot of wisdom in just following Jesus' instructions right here. Lance, did I see your hand? Oh, stolen. Okay. All right. Anything else? Yeah. Kidding. Mm. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah, it's important for us to build relationships, right? That means making ourselves vulnerable to hurt and things like that. But if we don't have a relationship, then are they gonna listen to us? What is there to lose? Right. Speaking of losing, there is the last step in this process, right? And where it says, if he refuses to listen to the church, let him be to you as a Gentile and a tax collector. So now you finally have permission to, be cold and callous and to someone, right? Is that what that's saying? I see no. Well, what does it mean then? What does this mean? Let him to be to you as a Gentile or a tax collector. Mom? Yeah. There is, The idea of church discipline is sometimes it's called like the idea of like withdrawing from someone. But I don't see withdrawing being something that's done in a spiteful way ever, right? It's something that's done because we want people to feel sorry for the sin that they're in, right? And as my mom said, Jesus ate with tax collectors and people who are thought of as the worst of the worst. Our desire is to help those people. It's not to like make them outcasts or shun them. Yes, Randy. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. No matter what, we still want that reconciliation. This is not we've given up on it or we hate or anything like that. That's absolutely not. And really, when you think about like you've gone through all these steps and they still refuse to repent, then really it's in many ways it's they've done it to themselves, right? Like you can't force someone to be in a good relationship with you, and that's one of these things that we'll see with the idea of forgiveness. We can forgive internally, but sometimes the reconciliation doesn't happen because one party just doesn't want it. And so while we don't harbor ill will or hatred or anything in our hearts, sometimes the reconciliation fails. And that's unfortunate because our goal here is to reconcile. Yes? Right. No, very good, very good. Yeah, wisdom is so important in this conversation about reconciliation. We'll talk a little bit more about that on Wednesday. Yes? Yeah. All right, so just to conclude, bell rang. Who makes the first move? You make the first